Welcome to the Planet MicroCap Showcase Virtual 2022. I'm your host, Robert Kraft, and now presenting at our event is Andreas Lievendahl, CEO of IMINT Image Intelligence AB, IMNT on the Swedish Stock Exchange. Andreas, take it away.
So thank you, Robert. Really nice to be able to join in this event, and I hope you will find it interesting. So time is limited, so I will introduce the company briefly and present some highlights from our last quarter report, and then some forward-looking statement on financial targets for 2025. I have a lot of slides, so some of them I will jump through quickly in order to sort of highlight and stop on the relevant pages. We will soon publish our report in English, and you can also visit redeye.se or the IMINT website, where you can also see an earnings call done in English, where I go through some of the slides in more detail. So basically, IMINT is the company name, and Vidhance is the software package that we provide that enhance video in real time. So we are most known in our customer market as Vidhance. We are selling primarily to the largest smartphone OEMs, Android-based, but we are now growing up in other market verticals as well. Since our first launch of a smartphone with Vidhance, we believe around 800 million smartphones has been delivered powered by Vidhance. We are 15 years as a company, started as a classical research spin-out, doing video mosaicing, video stabilization. First couple of years, mainly in aeronautics and defense, but we really found gold when we turned around and targeted the consumer electronics market, and especially then smartphone. We did our IPO at the end of 2015, spent the coming years in maturing and growing and established routines and so on. Got profitable 2.5 years ago, and now we are putting in the next gear to go beyond smartphones. So that's the very quick timeline of the company. Target segments, it's smartphones and now other industrial verticals where the camera and live video can be mission critical. It could be body-worn cameras for police, head-mounted cameras for remote assistant field workers, and so on. If we look at the consumer segment of our business, this is typically very common questions from the investor market. So what is the product, what is the offering, what is the value, how do we make money, what is the market look like, and how do we conduct sales? So basically it's software and all the tools and utilities you need to trim and tune and optimize it running on a hardware platform, typically a chipset from like Qualcomm. And the value in the consumer space is, of course, the perceived video quality when you do recordings as an end user. So camera is really the driving feature of a modern smartphone, as you know. But as we're looking into more industrial verticals, we see another type of mission critical and business critical values being locked up with our software. We keep the bulk of our revenues as different type of IP licensing. We have recurring revenues in terms of maintenance and support agreement, and we believe that especially in the professional segments, that we will see a lot more of subscription-based licensing. So today, smartphones is our main revenue source, approximately 90%. And we conduct sales today mainly through direct sales, through classical key account management. Really important partners for us are the big chipset makers like Qualcomm and MediaTek. Here's some of our prominent customers. You can see a lot of well-known consumer electronics and smartphone brands among those. For the US market, I think Motorola is one of our key customers that we cooperate very close with. So now going back to the Q3 that closed and reported last Friday, we're keeping revenue levels stable around 16 million crowns. That's roughly about 1.5 million US. The Swedish crown is weak now compared to the US dollar, so that helped us a bit, because in the consumer segment, we are really feeling a bit of sourness in the general market, with smartphone volumes dropping and consumer being more hesitant to spend. But we keep revenue or profitability on a strong level, so earnings on around 4 million crowns. And especially we have been now adding a lot of cash due to positive operational cash flow over 2.5 years. So we have about north of 80 million Swedish crown in our cash that we intend to not pay dividends on, but to use for further growth, especially in opening up acquisition opportunities. So looking at the first 9 months of this year, our revenue is about 52 million crowns. And so that's a growth over last year. And we're also growing, according to plan, our cost level, and that is primarily due to new hires. We see now that we are creating 2 business units, and I will talk about we need basically more hands. There are a lot of opportunities, and in some new industrial verticals, we see blue ocean opportunities, and we want to be really quick on that one. Some highlights, and I won't go through all these bullets. They are, as I mentioned, available elsewhere as well. Smartphone market is slow. We have the worst Q3 decline ever reported, according to market research firms. And the drop was especially significant within China, with the prolonged COVID policies really being a burden to the Chinese industry. But we are counteracting that through partnerships in China that reside in China. In the last quarter, we had some new good victories. We're working very close with Asus. They launched their Zenfone 9. Critics acclaimed, and we had a major part of that. There's also a newcomer called Nothing that we also work with. That seems to be getting off for a good start. But primarily, we are now moving investments and resources and focus to professional verticals. So here comes the forward-looking slide. High ambitions for 2025. So starting next year, we will start our reporting based on 2 business units. One for the consumer, which is the bulk of revenue today, and the new professional business unit. We do this for the purpose of sort of transparency and clarity to the market, because the professional, we believe, will propel our long-term and sustainable growth, but it will take some investments. So you can follow us and clearly see what we are doing in both of these segments. If you put everything into one bucket, I think it would be a more confusing picture. So at the end here, I mentioned the professional market, higher value of mission-critical operations, and a completely different type of stickiness and horizon that we can see for our revenues. So smartphone is royalty-based. So if you get a good design win, you will have 2-3 good quarters, but you don't see typically much longer than that. So we think this will be a good step for us in terms of sustainable long-term growth. Some statements on financial targets on the professional business unit. Our ambition is to reach 50% of IMINT total revenue by end of 2025. So that's an ambitious target. Today, it's just a few percent. We believe we can reach EBIT margins by the end of 2025 of about 30%. And over the next coming years, we will successively move more and more resources and investment into this new business unit and focus our M&A search on this segment. In the consumer space, they have filled up our bank account with 80 million crowns in cash, and we intend to keep that market, be a leading player within our field, work very close with our key customers, and ensure that this will be a cash-generating part of the company. Quickly, some slides to see on how sour the smartphone market is, and especially for the Chinese players, Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo, you can see very sharp decline Q3 over Q3. This is the penetration of smartphones enabled with Vidhance, and you can see it's steadily growing, and we are now north of 800 million units. I will probably, due to a Zoom meeting, not play this video over YouTube because it will be very bad, so I will skip this one. But basically, these are a few slides to educate the market on what do we mean with professional users. So this is one example of a vertical that we are addressing today, just to basically inform the market. Because if we just say professional users, can be hard to imagine what we actually mean. So this is the remote assist use case that is expected to grow significantly within the industry. It's basically frontline workers. Something like 80% of the global workforce do not work at a desk. They work in factories, in warehouses, and so on, and don't really have access to good digital tools. But with smart glasses or head-mounted cameras, you will be enabled to do much more trickier task if you have an expert remotely that can guide you. And we are now addressing that market as well. So some issues is like if you have a head-mounted camera and you're going to fix some piece of equipment and the product expert is on the other side of the planet, trying to watch through your camera and give instructions, you will have problems with shakes and tilts, moving around, bad bandwidth, hard to zoom in and see details. Your head will move around involuntarily, hard to scan codes and so on. And we looked at the Vidhance portfolio that we designed for the consumer use case and realized that we can retarget a lot of these functions specifically to aid in this type of professional vertical. I will try to see if it works through Zoom and see this video. So this is an example of a helmet-mounted camera on the left. And imagine now that you are a remote expert that is trying to guide this poor fellow and check on the readings on the meter he has. So here's a function we call click and lock, where you basically remotely can say that this is the object that I want to zoom in and keep stable and in focus. So that can make a huge difference, of course, in critical maintenance or repair tasks. Here's another example for sort of precision work. In this case, it's some model toy, but you can see on the screen below, completely different kind of stability and focus are enabled. And one example of precision work that is really a matter of life and death is remote surgery or remote expert within the medical domain, which is, I think, a very interesting market that we're also looking into. And in this picture, you can see the doctor wearing smart glasses and relaying video to other experts that can follow the procedure. Another example market is body-worn cameras, used a lot today by police forces. We see them more and more in the domain of public safety. I think US is one of the key markets here, and that market is expected to grow a lot over the coming years. Equally relevant for our kind of technology, and we are having some initial discussions with leading players. So going back to the remote assistant use case is another data point. This is how augmented reality is expected to grow specifically in the car industry, car manufacturing. And you can see use cases like remote assistance, training, or step-by-step instruction, all of them requiring really good video quality being sent from the frontline worker. And you can see a very dramatic growth is expected here. And of course, the COVID pandemic really was an eye-opener to the industry. Suddenly you couldn't send the expert to the actual site, and you had to be improvise. So a lot of smart glasses, etc., have been bought, and now they're trying to figure out how they can make best use of them. So I went to a show a couple of weeks ago, specifically in the AR segment, and one of the leading players in remote assistance is TeamViewer. So gave out some good examples on how the industry looks like, and especially what the barriers are for this to really take off. And video quality is one of the main barriers for this. As the first time I present here, I put together graphs on our journey as a company, as a listed company. So starting from 2016, you can see to the left revenue, steady growth, and profit. Early 2020, we turned profitable and have kept good profit levels since. And as an effect, you can see our cash position is really strong now. So net sales over the time, it's a steady growth, but as I mentioned, it was a slower quarter than the past couple of quarters. But we kept on hiring, especially this spring and summer, to be able to grab all the new opportunities we see. And the cost follows primarily our hires, as we are a software company. Basically, the majority of our costs are staff costs. Brilliant brains, basically. And profit levels, you can see them on a sane and steady level here for many quarters now. And the cash again. Won't go into details here, but we are roughly on the same level when it comes to depreciation and new capitalized development cost. We expect capitalized development cost to increase next year as we're making more fundamental investment in our core technology. So some key takeaways. So to wrap this up, the global recession, including geopolitical changes, the war in Ukraine, trade conflict with China, and China's dual circulation policy, where they're trying to source alternatives from within China, are all challenges short term for the consumer segment. We saw that as a very slow smartphone sales quarter. We counteract that both with working smarter and quicker with our key customers to keep a healthy profit margin on the consumer segment. But in terms of cost and investment, we are directing it more and more to the professional business unit. The consumer segment, we intend to keep highly profitable, 30% or above during these coming years. And the professional segment will focus on market verticals with a high level of recurring revenues, where subscription models are typically used, like you are renting your smart glasses for a monthly fee per worker using them and so on. So that will change our business model a lot as we can go to more of a software as a service type of company. And we have high ambitions and believe that by end of 2025, our professional business unit will represent 50% of the company's total revenue and reach the same profit margin at the end of this time period. And with that, I am finished with the presentation. I hope you found it interesting and would be happy to take questions.
All right, Andreas, thank you very much for your presentation here today. So my first question for you is, what percentage of revenue already makes up for the professional segment?
I would say around 5, maybe. So it's very small, and we are also delaying revenues actually, because we want to find subscription models rather than getting royalties per device, because we want to stay with the customer and be able to provide upgrades and earn money in the long term.
Absolutely. Well, what would that look like, for those that aren't maybe too aware with how the models work on the consumer side, what are you hoping for those royalty models to really look like? Like they get the, I'm not saying the phone, right? The different type of software, but they get maybe the hardware, and then they subscribe to you for what, like bandwidth, let's say, or being able to store some of that data? What does that look
You mean in the consumer segment?
like? On the professional side.
On the professional side, yeah, exactly, yeah. So we will the basic idea, we implement our software in the actual devices. They are typically, they are connected, so that you can field update them. And then you basically lock up certain functionalities if there is a valid license key, which you can subscribe to. So that's the plan for the model there.
Very good. And then you also mentioned that you're looking to deploy some of the cash on hand with M&A to help grow the professional segment, without necessarily naming maybe specific targets itself. But what are some of the criteria that you're looking at for those M&A activities?
Right. We give high priority on companies that are already running a sane business and are profitable, probably rather than maybe promising startups, because we're not the right firm to judge potential of a startup. We can make exception, of course, if there is technology that we can reasonably believe that we can commercialize quickly. But we have a sort of a different perspective than maybe a VC firm would have. And something that could strengthen our offering in the professional segment. So neighboring technologies that are also used in these spaces could be a really good company to team up with.
Absolutely. So another question that I'm asking everyone on here, and you've already alluded to it in terms of maybe some potential headwinds, the macro headwinds that are potentially working against the company here. We're all managing through tough markets. What measures is the company taking to manage these macroeconomic pressures that you both outlined, and maybe others that are unforeseen that are also currently affecting the global microcap community?
Right. No, I think we probably not continue to grow our cost levels. We're getting a bit more cautious on that. We'll make exception for really key individuals that we think could quickly add to a performance. But we are moving away, I think, some cost from the general consumer business unit or smartphone, working, I think, quicker and smarter with our leading accounts. Because we've seen in the past that with the right Vidhance product for the right customer getting into high volume phones has an extremely good profit margin. So we can't really control how long this recession will last and when consumer will get back in stores and buy a new phone. But we can, of course, control our own cost and how much we put into that market.
Absolutely.
But I think that the main thing is that we are now investing in the professional market, and it's like body cameras or remote surgery and so on. Publicly funded organizations, they typically get more money in a recession than the private ones.
Absolutely. So then, looking ahead, from what you can tell us to 2023, what would you say are the company's primary value catalysts that you think folks should pay attention to?
No, I think really good question. I think over time, of course, now we have stated our goals, but so far they are only words, right? But I think if you look at the company as more than the sum of its parts, I think we are valued now as being this smartphone-oriented company with high risk, but also high margins, right? We go up and down with the global consumer trends, which makes some quarters fun and some quarters not so fun. And I think the valuation is that we actually lack revenue horizon 5+ years. But if you look at the professional market as the thing that will keep on growing steadily and sustainable, and then the consumer segment as the icing on the cake with huge potential going forward, especially with new type of devices adapted for the coming metaverse. There could be real upsides in the consumer space. But I think companies should be evaluated as more than the sums of its parts.
Absolutely. So then my final question for you today, obviously the clear focus for the company moving forward is growing the professional segment. What is the marketing strategy that the company is looking to implement in order to hit the goals that you're hoping to achieve?
Right. We take them, we were sort of really religious about sort of the lean philosophy of working really agile, quick, and customer close. So we take one vertical at the time, and now we're starting to parallelize that. Small teams that work with the ecosystem, understand who are the players, and then quickly adapt our portfolio to fit that market and adapt marketing material, sales channels, etc., to be able to quickly grasp that market and put the IMINT flag and keep that our blue ocean.
So Andreas, we're there. Where can our audience go and find more information on IMINT as well as Vidhance?
Right. Recommend visiting our website. We are imint.com, where you will find product information and financial information and so on.
Very good. Well, Andreas, thank you very much for the presentation today. And I hope everyone watching and listening enjoyed everything they had to say.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for watching.